the calling on your life is probably so strong, you're already living it out. And so I think that'll put a lot of people at ease because it seems so natural to you, what you're already passionate about, what you already love doing, that you're missing it entirely. And I think so many people have their things that they care about that they don't even realize that they care about it so much because it's so naturally part of who they are.
I believe every single person has a ministry. Ministry isn't just for preachers and it's not just for pastors. It's the way you shine the light that God gave you through His Spirit in all spaces that He's trusted you to walk. That means you on your college campus. That means you at your corporate job. That means you in high school. That means you with your friends at the bar or the restaurant. That means you wherever you are. You have the responsibility to shine God's light in that space, and you get the chance to. Friend, you are beautiful, you are worthy, and you are made to shine. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Made to Shine show. I'm so tickled excited right now because we have one of my favorite people in the world, their son, on with me today. And I believe he's going to become my next favorite person in the world. We have Colton Kyle on with us today, who is just spearheading the efforts for the rebranding of the American Sniper brand. Oh my gosh, Colton, I am so pumped to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Annie. I'm so excited. I love your energy. It's infectious.
Oh my gosh, right? And I know we're recording early in the morning, so I'm a morning person, so you're getting like,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is the high of my day. But I was telling you a little bit about this before we jumped on. Here at the show, we believe every single person has a ministry, not just preachers and pastors. It's literally the way every person is responsible for the light God put in their heart and shines it in all spaces that they hold. And what I've seen from afar, what I was talking to Taya about, and now what I'm getting to experience up close, you do that so well with, I mean, you're a son, you're a friend, you're a brother. I mean, you're so many things. You're also 19, spearheading this amazing initiative for the American Sniper brand. It's so amazing, so impressive, but you shine God's light in all you do. And that's what's so cool to see, especially with someone that is your age. And so excited to have you on. And before we dive into all the things, we've got to kick this off with the way I kick off every show, which is, what is your favorite quote, Colton, and why?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, thank you very much. That is high praise. I appreciate that. Man, I have so many quotes and thoughts that just jumbled in my brain. But one of my favorite Bible verses, which I can quote, is Galatians 6:9. Um, Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we'll reap a harvest if we do not give up.
Mm.
It seems very simple and basic, but I think for me, that's exactly what I need. And it's a great reminder that just do the next right thing. Just continue doing good, and we'll reap a harvest if we don't give up. So that's my daily encouragement, and I try and encourage others with that as well.
Okay, have you ever seen the movie Frozen 2?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's a classic, right? So she has a song in there that's like, is it do the next right thing or one step? It's when
Yeah.
it's when Elsa is gone and Anna
Mhm.
is, everything's, Olaf is gone, and she just starts singing like do the next right thing. But it's so funny you say that because whenever I get really overwhelmed, the kind of the meditation God's been putting on my heart is just do the next right thing. What's the
Yep.
next right thing? You don't have to have 6 steps figured out from now. Just do the next step. And I love that verse too, because it says at its proper time. And a lot of times we want our results to be now. We want to
Yep.
start doing things now. And so you right now are doing so many amazing things. And it's so easy to look at your life, see someone your age and go, wow, this guy just has it all together. Like he's just a rock star right out of the gates. But I know as an entrepreneur myself, really, there's no such thing as an overnight success. Like when you kickstart something and it does well, it's from like years of compiled little steps. And so what I would love to do is, one, of course, we're going to talk about the American Sniper brand, but I also want to talk about Colton. And I want to talk about who the guy is I'm talking to today, how you got the faith that you have that's able to influence American Sniper brand as you have. So take us back to Colton, you grew up in a very, like, one of your values with this brand is family. You grew up with, like, with an interesting family dynamic, like at 8 years old, losing your dad, and then Taya being a single mother raising you. So talk to us about some of those values that were instilled in your family that influenced you and the person I'm speaking to today that's able to bring such an energy and light and hope through this brand of yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this opportunity. I do want to go back to, as we were saying, just do the next right thing and expand on that because um, I know it's very important to me. I like to bodybuild, and so I'm dieting right now, and it's very
Are you
difficult.
cutting? Is it cutting season? Okay.
For me,
My
it is.
boyfriend's super into like stuff like that, so I like hear a lot about it.
Yeah. So I have to remind myself, like I don't need to take on the anxieties of tomorrow and let
Mm,
each day's problems be each day's problems, but just do what I'm doing right now. And that also translates to American Sniper and my brand and my personal brand, my path, all that stuff. But I was talking to my girlfriend just recently in the car about this, kind of talking about future and all of that. But in Psalms, it says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet and a light for my path." And I I don't remember if somebody explained this or if it came to me. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but essentially the important part is a lamp for my feet. It's not a high beam. It's not for me seeing the future or the entire path. It's just a lamp and it's just for my feet. And so all that really lets me do is see the next right step, and then trust God with the path and He's going to light it up. So that's been encouraging for me. It's like I'm not supposed to know the path. I'm not supposed to know where I'm going to end up or how my work is necessarily going to pay off. But I just have to follow the lamp at my feet and follow the word.
that's so
Um,
good. That and you can do that when you trust the path maker,
mhm.
you know?
Yes,
Like he
exactly.
tells us to seek first the kingdom, and there's a reason he tells us that because if we don't, we freak out because we don't know the path, but we're never supposed to.
Yes.
Um, so I love that. Thank you for adding that.
I guess I felt like somebody needed to hear it for some reason.
I love that.
Um, but yeah, I definitely don't have everything figured out, like you were saying. And anyone who tries to play it off like they do is usually the person who doesn't the most and is
Mhm.
the most nervous and worried about it. Um, I am very happy with where I'm at, but obviously I have big ambitions and I have a lot that I want to do with the brand. And I certainly don't have everything figured out. I just do what I know to be right now, and what I
Yeah.
enjoy doing on top of that. So for me, that's building the American Sniper brand. It's bodybuilding. Talked a little bit. I'm very passionate about apologetics as well.
Yes.
So
Oh my
actually,
gosh.
last
So
night
cool.
I almost fell asleep watching. This is gonna sound so nerdy. Have you ever heard his Dr. Hovind? He's a creationist. Yes.
Yes. Okay. No, when you said this is going to sound so nerdy, I'm like, I promise it's not going to. I fall asleep or not fall asleep, but I like my Netflix at night is Dr. Frank Turek, who
Yeah,
is like an apologetic. Yeah. So trust me, you can't out nerd this girl. I promise. All apologetics information is welcome here.
that's awesome. But yeah, I was watching his like 2 hour long debate with three evolutionists, which I just found so interesting. And I'm personally trying to minister to one of my friends about about Christianity as a whole. He seems open to it, which I'm very excited about. And but he's a brilliant guy, and so he's he did not grow up in a Christian household, and he's more naturally inclined to believe in science, which I always have a problem with that. It's not one or the other. To me, it's both, and
Mhm.
it seems very divisive that you have to choose one or the other, like as
Yeah.
if you're religious or if you have belief and faith, and you can't believe in science, and that vice versa. When either one is a religion and either one takes faith, and so it's which
Mhm.
one takes less faith. And so uh, I have Dr. Frank Turek's book, and Norman Geisler, and I haven't finished it actually, but I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. It takes a
Yes.
lot more faith to be an atheist and to believe in just science than it
Yeah.
does to believe in a creator and the Christian God. So
It's
yeah.
so true. I nerd about this so much. And something you said too, like when I was looking up the brand, etc., your target audience is people who aren't afraid of showing their faith. And that like really struck me because I do think we live, especially, I mean, you're 19, I'm 26. This whole podcast is with it, it's 18 to 26-year olds. So like we're the sweet spot of who we're talking to right now. And I do think there is this plague of people who are so afraid to talk about God. Even
Mhm.
I was on the phone with a really good friend the other week. This friend has inspired me in my faith, and she was opening up to me about like, Annie, I don't know what, if it's like, if it's the enemy, if it's a spirit of fear, but I just like every time I've just noticed if I post on Instagram and it includes God, I get less likes. I get like, and she's noticing stuff like that. And so we just had a very honest conversation about it. And so I'm curious for you, like, as someone who's so into apologetics, like so into looking at the truth, something I read this morning that I thought was so good was the cool thing about Christianity. It's true. It's not just, I hope it's true. It's like, it's true. Where did all of this start? Like this curiosity? Do you always have a faith of your own? Or was it more so you adopted it from your parents and then developed it on your own that led to this person that is so young, that is unapologetically talking about their faith?
Yes. So, um, I was talking to my buddy about this as well because, like I said, he wasn't raised in a Christian household and I was, and so to him it
Mm,
just seems like, well, you were brought up this way, of course you're going to believe these things. I was brought up
yeah.
this way, of course I'm going to believe these things. Um, and so, but I'm excited because I was brought up to believe. I was brought up in my mom and dad were very strong believers, and my
Mhm,
mom has continued to grow in her faith, and so have we as a family and individuals. But um, so we went to church, and I believed in God, and I believed in the Bible, and I trusted what it said was true, and all that sort of thing. But it was more of a blind faith, which is natural for a child,
mhm,
not to be able to grasp these more complex ideas. But
mhm.
I I imagine you're probably familiar with Cliff Nechtel. He's very
Mhm.
popular on social media right now. Yeah.
Yep.
So what I really like about what he says to people about apologetics and Christianity specifically is he's saying, well, listen, I was brought up in this, but I was like, I'm not going to be tricked and I'm not going to be fooled into just
Mhm,
believing something because I was brought up that way or because that those are the people around me. Like, I'm going to break this down and see what is the truth, because if it's not the truth, it seems like it'd be a lot easier to not live a Christian life than it would to live a Christian life. It seems a
mhm,
lot more disciplined um, and there's heavy emotions behind it, and what's right and what's wrong. It seems very black and white versus being your own God and the master of your own life. It
yeah.
seems a lot more enjoyable almost, or appealing at first. So if I'm going to believe this, which seems like the more difficult option, I better know why I believe it and really break it
Mhm,
down. So I was kind of that opinion as well, and just a natural curiosity. I've always been very
mhm.
curious about um, learning in general. I love to learn, and so to me,
Yeah.
it seemed like, well, what's the most important thing I could know about, and that would be my faith, because it's the only
Mhm,
thing relevant past this life is
mhm,
eternity, and that's a
mhm,
lot longer than however many. Let's say we have 80 years here. It's like a
mhm,
blink of an eye in comparison. So um, I've always been very curious, and I've really enjoyed talking about faith and learning apologetics without knowing that it's apologetics. I
mhm.
love.
Yeah.
I admit I can be quite difficult to argue with, because if I'm going to argue with somebody, I know
Mhm,
100% I am right. Going
mhm,
into an argument, there's no option in my mind that if I'm going to
mhm,
argue about this, well, maybe you'll change my mind.
mhm,
And so, I going into arguments, that's very difficult for my friends and family and things like
mhm.
that. It's like, look, if I don't think I'm right, I'm not going to argue about it. But if I do think I'm right, I'll take you on, because I know I've got the receipts, I've got the
You
evidence.
got it.
Yeah, exactly,
You did the due diligence.
exactly. So then when
Mhm,
people would talk about faith, and just honestly, I never really had anybody challenge me personally,
mhm,
like I know many people have. I mean, I have recently, but um, I haven't had anybody challenge me. And then I was like, oh crap, I don't know. I better look this up and I better find out. It
mhm,
was it was seeing things online, or it was talking to other people and listening like vicariously through their experiences. And it's like, well, I don't want to get caught off guard. And if somebody comes to me, I want to know what I believe and why I believe it. So just a natural curiosity and hunger, and definitely spirit led, because it's not something that to me seems very natural to be so curious about if it wasn't the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so true too. Like as you were talking, I feel like we're talking to two groups of people. Well, by nature, if someone's listening to this podcast, I do think they have that inkling from the Holy Spirit of curiosity, because
Mhm.
we talk about God like all this podcast. But I think there's twofold. It's like, one, it's having that curiosity in the first place, and then knowing what to do with it. Because I would say the biggest trick the enemy, I feel like, is playing on us today is he's keeping us so busy and distracted and numbed out with all these constant distractions. We don't even have time to get curious about our faith, or get curious about where does that feeling come from? Why is there morality? Why is there good and bad? If that's true, what's the standard for that? Where does that come from? Like, we're so busy, we don't even have time to ask these questions that point back to a creator, that make it harder to have faith in nothing than to have faith in a God and Jesus as the Son of God, right? But I feel like the second side of that, about 2 years ago, when I kind of got into apologetics and like really looking at, I call it the data, but like the evidence. Like I was curious. I was like, what is this? Like, if I'm gonna base my life on this, I want to I want to challenge it. I want to ask. And I think we have a group of people too that maybe have grown up adopting their parents' faith. They go to church on Christmas and Easter. They're afraid to challenge it, because
Mhm.
if it's challenged and it doesn't hold up, their entire life construct in a way is gone. And so I'm curious, as someone who has walked that path of looking at the information, looking at it, one, as a young person, where did you start? And two, what hope can you give to someone that's like, I've been curious, but I'm also afraid. Like, I'm afraid if I really press, it's not going to ring true. It's not going to hold up. And then my entire life as I know it is just poof, confused. So what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that's so good about being so distracted. And I think that makes it so much easier. And like you said, I think it's the devil at work, but it makes it so much easier just to be the master of your own life and deem what is right and what is wrong on the fly without really thinking about the consequences. Well, if this is right and this is right, they can't both be right. But if
Mhm.
you're too distracted to really think about it, totally. Um, I have so many thoughts on this. I think one of the most important things is that if uh, you have to make a conscious decision to show bravery, and bravery does not mean not being afraid. It just means being afraid and doing it anyway. So show bravery in the way that if you're afraid you're wrong, you need to look anyways, because you care about the truth and you care about what's right. Um, and you should know for yourself, and you should know if, like, hey, if I look into this and Christianity is wrong, I mean, like I think I said already, it's a lot more disciplined lifestyle if you take it seriously than
Yeah.
not. So if you're really going to look into it and you're afraid you might be wrong about Christianity, what do you really have to lose?
Mhm.
To me, it doesn't seem like you have to lose anything except maybe a few years of embarrassment or something. Um, but I have confidence, and I can say that because I 100% believe what I am preaching in my faith. So another thing is, don't stop with one roadblock or one thing, one piece of evidence or something here or there. If it's for an atheistic worldview, or if it's for a Christian worldview, or for the Christian God, or whatever it is, you can find evidence for absolutely anything out there.
Yeah.
Um, it's just how much evidence and how sound is it, how strong is it. So go past just the first bit, the first answer to whatever question you have. And
Mhm.
I think that's really important, because you could ask anybody any question, they can give you an answer. And one, it might not be true. But let's say it is
Mhm.
true, there's going to be things supporting that and pillars. And so examine whatever supports that claim and see, okay, well, does this make sense? Is this true? And where does that come from? All that kind of stuff. So show bravery and step out in faith and take that leap, because I think it's better to be to know what you believe and why you believe it than to believe the right thing blindly. And then, because if you believe it blindly, I don't even think it's the right thing. I don't even think you know. I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna go on a tangent, but
I love tangents. Tangents are welcome.
yeah. So step out in faith, step out in bravery, and then don't stop with the first piece of evidence, whether it's for or against what you already believe.
That's so, it reminds me of like when the Bible talks about like building your foundation on rock, like building it on
Mhm.
solid rock versus sand. You don't know what the foundation of your faith is until it's tested. Like you don't really know what you're building your life on until wind comes, rain comes, and the foundation of that thing is tested, right? And so I think that's so powerful. It's like sometimes external circumstances test our faith, things that are outside of our control, which everyone who's walking a human life is going to experience, but sometimes it's an inner nudge. It's almost like I think about gosh, I was in John, but in John, like when the Spirit led Jesus to the wilderness, like
Mhm.
it wasn't the enemy that led Jesus to the wilderness, it was the Spirit. Sometimes our spirit leads us to these places where at first we might ask, like, where is God? Why is this happening? But
Yeah.
really, it's for our good because it's aiding and feeding that curiosity that's ultimately going to let us know him more. I can't remember what documentary I was watching. It was some, have you ever heard the documentary Playing for Eternity?
I have not. No.
It's super good. I've been super into watching like sports and athletes that are super big advocates for Jesus and their faith. But it talks about like there was this one guy, and long story short, life wasn't going well, but he was like, when I was stripped of everything, that's when I actually got very aware that God was the only thing I needed. And he mirrored that to the story of Job. Like Job had everything. And when he lost everything, a lot of us look at that as like, man, God, why'd you do that to Job? But really, Job was never more blessed than when he had nothing. Because when he had nothing and God revealed himself, he had an experience most of us never get, which is, wow,
Yeah.
God, I get to see you when I have nothing, and I really understand you're the only thing I need. Like it kind of redefines what it means to be blessed. And so when you
Mhm.
have like anyone tuning in, if you have that curiosity, if you have that nudge, that inkling, as I like to call it from the Spirit, that little tickle to like look into that stuff, you should. As someone, I started with, there is, oh gosh, I can't remember. I'm sure you've read this book. It was written by an atheist. I literally have it on that bookshelf over there. It's called There Is a God, but it was written by an atheist that 2 years prior had released There Is No God and
Mhm.
then found God and re-released the book and scratched out the no and wrote There Is a God. One of the best books I've ever read. What I want to say too is what I think is so cool. So I've been in business now for, oh gosh, almost a decade. Like I started my first couple businesses when I was 19, your age. And so I think it's so cool what you're doing. There is such an amazing correlation between like faith and entrepreneurship and the way you can like build your faith muscle stepping out in faith in business endeavors and like how you see God in business. And I think as young people, we have boxes for God. We think, okay, God is in church on Sunday. God is in my worship music in my car on Sunday after church. Talk to me about like you're building this brand. This is new for you. I mean, you're doing business, you're doing all the things. How have you seen God in this process? And how have you practically brought God into all that you're doing instead of limiting him to the sermons you listen to or your quiet time in the morning?
That's such a good question. It's I want to steer people in the right direction. To me, it seems like it's been so integral to my life and the way that I live. It's just natural that it's that I know that he permeates everything.
Mhm.
And so whatever you do it for the glory of God kind of thing. Like when you have a godly mindset and perspective, then you're looking at anything that you do. Is this right or is this wrong? And how does this glorify God? If it's not glorifying Him, then it's probably not right.
Mhm.
And so, one thing that really plays into that and that I've struggled with before is, well, what is, if I'm not doing this and saying praise Jesus the entire time, then is it glorifying God? And so, I think when you look at, oh, I don't remember what the name for it is, but Paul goes through and he talks about what's good and holy and meditate on these things. And he lists multiple things or multiple concepts or ideas or themes that don't seem, that it's like, oh, of course that's what God encompasses, is all of these things, but you may not think about it at first as like hard work is right next to godliness and righteousness and patience and having peace. And it's like, okay, that all makes sense together, but what does that mean? That means when you, let's say you're an athlete and you're training for a sport, when you give it your all and then and you're not saying praise Jesus the whole time, that's still being godly and righteous and doing exactly what He wants you to do, because how you do one thing is how you do all things. And so it's showing, this is the character of my heart, that I'm going to do exactly what I should do and I'm going to give it my all. And of course, that translates to other areas. Or when you have peace and you have patience with someone that doesn't deserve it or that we think doesn't deserve it, that's not, and then you're not telling them, oh, well, I'm just doing this because Jesus said I should, or you're not necessarily evangelizing to them at that time. That's still showing godliness. It's doing what you know to be right, um, and trying to exercise those values even when you're not saying, like I said, praise Jesus all the time. It's like I've struggled with that with, let's say, American Sniper.
Mhm.
How do I wear and represent American Sniper and expand the brand and do it all in the name of God if I'm not,
Mhm.
if I don't have a Bible verse on every stitch of clothing, and if I don't talk about God every time I talk about American Sniper, which I kind of do, but I think you get where I'm going with this. It's just living out the people that God made us to be, and with the
Mhm.
values that are intrinsically set in us,
Mhm.
and doing the right thing even when you're not saying it out loud.
Yeah, that's so good. That is back to the mission of this whole podcast. Like everyone has a ministry. It's the way you
Mhm.
shine your light. I'm such a believer too. Like it's funny. I was on a podcast conversation the other day, and it was more of like a girl talk secular show, and but I couldn't help but talk about God. Like I was like, oh yeah, that's in Galatians, and they're like,
Yeah.
what? And you're like, right. But when it's who you are, you it doesn't, it's just who you can't, it does not like clothing you take off. It goes with you everywhere.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you think about like the fruits of the spirit. The fruits of the spirit, they're your fruit, but to have fruit means you're rooted, and it means you're receiving nutrients from
Mhm.
something that like, so you think about like if God's your son and like you're receiving nutrients from him, that's in your heart. Like that you can't go anywhere, whether you're in your corporate job or your college or your high school campus. It's like you can't help but talk about God. And sometimes I think too, we overcomplicate things. I always say, you know, the best conversations I've had about Jesus, people asking me about Jesus, is it's not because I like spit out a Bible verse at them and they were like, what does that mean? It's because I was in a situation where they were like, why is she so
Yep.
happy all the
Yep.
time? Why is she so like, why did she act like that when everybody else was cussing or ticked off? What does she know that I don't?
Mhm.
And that's how the conversation started. It didn't start even like, who's Jesus? It started as, what do you know? Or like,
Mhm.
why are you the way you are? And we're called to be peculiar, you know, like we're called to be weird and different and stand out to be able to do that. And I think what's interesting too about like everything you're doing, and I've actually never heard it put that way. I love that you said that. Like if I can't say praise Jesus throughout all of this, that's a really good barometer that like it's probably not what I'm called to do, or like what I'm or I'm not stewarding that well. I'm curious if you've heard the same with like people your age, but I know especially with this younger generation, there's just this anxiety and fear over God, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like, what's my purpose? Why am I here? Am I supposed to be like Colton, spearheading a business? Am I supposed to be like a podcast host? Am I supposed to be a full-time mom or full-time dad? And then you compare and compare and compare to what you don't even know is supposed to be your purpose, so what everybody else seems to have figured out for theirs to be.
Mhm.
What would you say, like, for you is a good barometer on what you're supposed to do as you're glorifying God, that you've just kind of seemed to be a good litmus test for people?
Yeah, and I'm totally stealing that, by the way. If you're bearing fruit, it means you're rooted. That's so good. I haven't heard that before, but I mean, it makes sense naturally.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's so good.
Steal
Um,
away.
I will, I will. Um, uh, one thing to add on to what you were just saying is I've heard this. I didn't come up with this, although I wish I could take credit for it because I think it's so good. But for most people, we as Christians are the closest thing they'll ever read to the Bible.
Colton, oh my gosh, you did not just say that. I literally have it like, so my friend gave me this like thing of matches, and it says, well, kind of similarly, it says the only book of the Bible someone might ever read is The Way You Live Your Life. Make sure it reads lovingly.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, that's crazy. Keep going. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, I think it's so good. And like I said, I can't obviously take credit for it, but it's so true. And I think that kind of goes, and I think that leads into what we're saying is what you're calling is first live out what Jesus asked us to.
Mm.
And part of that is repentance because we're not going to do everything 100% right. We're not going to do everything like we should, but he takes that into account and he says, repent and do good anyways, and continue to love your neighbor and love yourself. Um, I saw this, ironically, I saw it on Instagram. There can be good from it as well as a lot of bad. But one thing that sticks out to me is, and this is how it already felt without necessarily putting it into words, the calling on your life is probably so strong, you're already living it out. And so I think that'll put a lot of people at ease because it seems so natural to you, what you're already passionate about, what you already love doing, that you're missing it entirely. And so for me, it was like apologetics, apologetics, apologetics. And I kind of realized, well, I'm so passionate about it. I want to do what I love. So how do I make this my job? Or how do I make a job out of this? Um, and so I do want to, I just graduated high school last year. So I've taken this past year to focus on American Sniper. Um,
Congratulations, by the way. That's
thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. I know it's very difficult. Um, but I plan to get my doctorate in apologetics. And so, I mean, I can say I plan to do this and I plan to do that. It doesn't really mean anything until I have. But that is my passion. And I know that's what I want to do, not necessarily even as a job. I mean, maybe it turns into something, maybe it doesn't. But because I'm so passionate about it. And I think so many people have their things that they care about that they don't even realize that they care about it so much because it's so naturally part of who they are. And so for you, if that's you love connecting with people, you love talking with people and sharing the gospel and everything, it's like, okay, well, of course you should be a podcast host. Of course, it should be all about made to shine and Jesus and everything. But it seems so natural. It's like I love doing this as part of who I am that you may not even realize that's the calling on your life. And so think about what you're passionate about and what you love doing already, and then as long as that aligns with your Christian faith, which I think it would be easy to make that do, like I said, you don't have to be saying, okay, if I do a podcast, it's going to be all about Jesus. You say, if I do a podcast, for example, it's all about entrepreneurship and helping people grow. But I'm going to talk about Jesus and I'm going to talk about how my faith plays a role. And the way I do business is going to represent Jesus as well. Um, so I think it's already, you should already know what you're passionate about, and that's your calling. Not necessarily that you know your calling, but you know who you are and who God has made you to be. And it's probably so natural you don't even realize it.
That's so beautiful. I have truly never, ever heard it put like that. And that really ministered to me. I think it's the things that come so naturally, we discount, like we discredit. We think because it comes so naturally, that can't be it. Because that's something that I'm not like striving for and I have to, it's like that pish posh. Like there's no, we belittle it.
Yep.
And we also belittle it depending on different seasons. Like I've always kind of put it like, your purpose is to glorify God. That's why we're here. How
Mhm.
you do that is going to be different depending on which season you're in. There might be a season you're a full-time dad or a full-time mom, and that is what you're called to be in that season. And another season, it's a CEO, and another season, it's a writer. But it depends on seasons. But I love what you said about like it coming so natural because we all have natural inclinations. So I work with a group of middle schoolers and they were asking me this the other day, like, Kenny, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm like, you were in sixth grade, honey
Yeah,
boo. Like,
exactly.
why are we worried about this? But I was just telling them, you're going to have natural curiosities, and those are your little markers from God. I mean, think about all the things in your life. Like my sister, she's a fourth grade teacher. Out of all the occupations in her entire life and that you could possibly have in this world, for some reason she was drawn towards fourth grade teaching. That's crazy. She could have been a lawyer, a doctor, a podcast host, a professional wrestler. Probably not, but she could have been anything,
Mhm.
and she was drawn towards that. And so I think that's what, like, if you ever question what you're doing, think about the contrast. Think about all the things, other things you aren't doing that you could be doing. For some
Mhm.
reason you're doing that. So I love, like, that was so powerful what you just said. And to tie that into what you are currently doing with the American Sniper brand, I think it'd be helpful for people to take us to like the mission statement, what it is, kind of what you were brought on to revamp, and yeah, like why now? What you're so excited about it now for people to know.
Yeah, thank you. Um, I did want to, oh shoot, there was something I felt like I should say, and now I've lost it. Um, um, oh, when when you know what you love doing and when it's almost so easy you don't think about it, and that's why we tend to belittle it, is because it doesn't take effort necessarily. Those are
Mm-hmm.
the things that you can wake up and do every single day. That's when you can enjoy doing what you love, and the work that you do, it doesn't even feel like work. And who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to not feel like they have to work, but they're still doing it? It's not like you're not working or you're being lazy. You're doing it just simply because you love it, and it's going to turn into something that benefits you because it's going to work for you essentially just because you love doing it. And when it's that natural, and then you can wake up and do it every day. I think that's exactly what God has intended for you.
That I just have to add this too because that is so powerful. You think about going back to what we said at the beginning of this podcast, one step at a time. Anything great that's taken place is an accumulation of a bunch of small steps, which requires consistency. And so, what you just said, like anything you're called to do, God knows it's going to take a lot of small steps, which means you're going to have to want to do it every day. And I think about how consistent God is. Like the sun rises every single day. We don't even think about that. It
Mhm.
also sets and the moon rises. And we get like just the things that take place every single day. God is a consistent.
Yep.
And I think that's not a word we use to describe him very often, but it's like, what are the things that you consistently do because you enjoy them so much that other people would be like, that's so monotonous. I would hate that.
Yep.
But those are the things like God's going to use to build that thing in your life that really glorifies him. And even the consistency glorifies him. Like every single day, hopping on an episode, talking about the American Sniper brand, like you're doing with consistency, getting in your word. I love that. Love that. So thank you for sharing. Had to add
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I think it's so reassuring to me too, because I've definitely worried about what if I do this? What if I do this? Um, but yeah, and then it's like the American hustle culture right now is you got to wake up and you got to grind and you're gonna hate it, but you got to do it anyways. And it seems like everybody wants to be David Goggins, and I'm just doing this because it's hard. It's like you can do the easy things as well that you already enjoy doing and let that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely should do things that are hard. I'm not saying it to avoid adversity, I think that's what makes you better and what makes you stronger. But you're going to face adversity no matter what. So why
Mhm.
not face adversity in things you already love doing?
That's
That's
so good. It's like running with the wind versus running against it. Running
yeah.
is hard, no matter what kind of running you do. And I do love to run. So, but like running is hard, but you might as well run with the wind. It's a lot easier than if you're running against it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I appreciate you letting me talk about American Sniper. So
Yes.
um, I've I've condensed it to what I believe are the five pillars that and that are the values that my father and I share, and that I think we both live out in slightly different ways. But that's godliness, passion, patriotism, service, and excellence. And
Mm,
so I think family. You'd think it deserves its own pillar, but I think it's so closely related with godliness that it's just natural. When you think of godliness, you think of a nuclear family, and you think of a family that loves and does it righteously and actively. So if you're wondering where the family is, I think it fits right into godliness. But I don't have any plans to go into the military. A lot of people ask me that, um, which I totally understand. I don't have plans. I think God has a different calling on my life, as we've already talked about a little bit. Um, but yeah, right now I'm selling merchandise on americansniper.com. That's not my
mm,
end goal. I do enjoy it though. My end goal is actually to move into selling firearms and move into the tactical space. So
mm.
uh, I'm I think I think firearms are super cool. I think tactical space is super cool. Like I said, I love learning, so I have a lot of passions, a lot of interests. Um, but that's one of them, and I think it fits well because I'm carrying on my father's legacy and doing it in a way that he would want, which is my own way, in a way that honors him and then glorifies God um, and
That's so amazing.
shows our family and can show um, more than just a man or more than just a story, but it really, I think American Sniper and what the brand that I'm making it more than just a person or a story completely encompasses the person and the story and the movie and everything while representing more and showing you this is who we are, this is how we live life.
Yeah.
And it all, at the end of the day, points back to Jesus because it's everything
Yeah.
he teaches.
That's, it came to mind like obviously the word brand it can mean so many different things, but I love like that the idea of an ambassador for a brand. Paul speaks to that, like we
Mhm.
are all ambassadors of Christ. And so
Yep.
I'm curious for you, like as someone that's building this out. And I love that you talked about, like I think so many young people, they get out of high school or they get out of college and they think they have to have the thing they're going to do for the rest of their life figured
Yeah.
out today.
Yep.
And good night. That was not my story. That's not anyone's story that I actually know. No one I know. It's like what they did at 20, 19, 25 is what they're doing at 50.
Yeah.
Because God changes your heart and changes your recognition on the next step. But all that to say, so I love that you mentioned that right now you are building out this brand. Brands have ambassadors. Ambassadors represent those values, they represent those things. I'm curious what your experience building this out, what it's taught you about what it means to be a brand ambassador, so to speak, for Christ that Paul talks about in the Bible, and walking in all the spaces that you hold. I mean, you were just in Nashville on a show. You just had like a feature on People magazine. Like, what has that experience building out this brand again taught you about being an ambassador for Christ?
Um, I think that when you're so closely related with something, when two things are so closely related that when you show one, you're showing the other. It's
Mm,
like peanut butter and jelly almost, but closer. It's I have confidence because I can just be who I am and who I want to be
mm,
because I know Christ lives inside of me and that the Holy Spirit is
mm.
active inside of me. Um, and part of that means that I'm praying before I do things, that I'm asking the Holy Spirit, okay, as you're asking me this question, Holy Spirit, lead me and speak for me, and I pray that you be glorified rather than myself. So um, I have confidence and joy that when I'm doing these things, I don't have to do them right necessarily. I don't
Mhm.
have to be perfect or 100%, but I get to be me because there's only one me,
Yeah.
and that Christ is going to shine through me because that's my goal, is to
Mhm.
glorify him. And when I trust him and put him first, then I know I'll be rewarded, whether that's here, whether that's in eternity, or both, hopefully
Mhm.
both. But um, I think that when you want a brand ambassador, you want somebody that represents you well, like you said.
Mhm.
And so when I'm looking for people, I'm saying, okay, what brands do I want to work with? Who's
Mhm.
most closely related with me? And then how can I put them at the forefront and let
Mhm.
them kind of lead the charge and that kind of thing. It's the exact
Mhm.
same way with Jesus. He's looking who's representing me the best. And
Mhm.
then I get to shower them with blessings. I get to let them lead the charge for me.
Yeah.
Or I get to let them do the hard work, and I'll be glorified through it. I think
Yeah.
it's very, like you said, it's ambassador. It's a
Mhm.
universal thing, but
That's so
you're
good.
looking for the people that are most closely related that make the most sense.
Mhm.
You're not gonna want to be attached to someone who's not representing you well. So
That's good.
yeah.
That's good. And you also don't want to be attached to something that you don't know super well, which goes
Mhm.
back to what we said about apologetics. I mean, I think about, um, or just when you're related to something, when you're an ambassador of something, people associate you with that thing. And so
Mhm.
you want to know that that thing that you say you represent, it's sound in your heart, in your mind, in your spirit. You're all in or you're all out. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard is go 100% one way or the other. Like if you're
Mhm.
going to be of the world, be 100% of the world. If you're going to be with Christ, be 100% with Christ, because the whole 50-50 thing, I think we got a lot of 50-50 Jesus followers out there. You know what I mean? It's like we wear our cross necklaces, we have our what would Jesus do bracelets, but we are consulting the world for our decisions, for our path in life, for our value, for our worth. We're consulting the image in the mirror. We're consulting what a boy or a girl says about us. We're consulting how many followers we have. It's like we say we love Christ and we're following him, but the way we base our worth in life is based off the world. And so it's like go all in one way or the other. And that makes life so much easier on both ends. Like on both ends, if you're all in for Christ, be all in for Christ. And it will even make your decision making easier, and you won't have all the angst of like what will people say, etc., because it's like seek first the kingdom, all else will follow. And Colton, I feel like I could talk to you for 6 hours. I
Me
always,
too.
you and your mom, I run out of time every single time. But this has just been so delightful. I want to round out with the question that I just think is so powerful, especially for someone who, yes, is like, to me it's not age that makes you wise. It's evaluated experience. And at 19, even just what I sense on this conversation, like you are so thoughtful and mindful in all the experiences you've had so far in 19 years of age, you've thought through and evaluated. And so I think this is a very powerful question for people tuning in to get from you, which is, Colton, like so far in life, what is the biggest and best piece of advice you've ever gotten, that you think would be relevant to the path you're walking right now and the path of the people tuning in?
Wow. Well, I could talk to you forever too, and I look forward to
You'll
our
have to
future
come back. You and
conversations.
your mom. We can do like a double conversation. It'd be so fun.
Oh my goodness. Would that be like a 3 hour long episode at
I
least?
know.
Um, Man, that's difficult. Um, I think the most important things, especially what I'm going through right now and what's most relevant to me, I think we've already said, um, which is do what you love, what you truly love. That's so natural. Um, that way you can show up every day. I've tried to show up every day and do things that I don't enjoy doing, and it is so incredibly hard. It just wears you
Mhm.
down in every area of your life. You're like, man, I don't even want to do the things I enjoy doing because I'm so sick and tired of doing what I don't enjoy doing.
Mhm.
Um, Doing that, going 100%. I'll say this quickly, but for you and me, for believers, earth is the closest thing we'll have to hell, and for those who are not heaven bound, this is the closest thing they have to heaven. So the fence riders lose 100%, right? They don't really enjoy this place and they don't get to enjoy the next place. Whereas the people who know exactly where they're headed and they're headed, in my opinion, in the wrong direction, they're at least going to enjoy it here for the 80 years that they have. But even though it's really only a blink of an eye, but we
Wow.
definitely have our work cut out for us.
Okay, I've actually never heard that before. That I just got chills. You said Earth is for believers, Earth is the closest thing to hell, and for
Mhm.
non-believers, Earth is the closest thing to heaven.
Yep.
That is, that's wow. That's there's a book I was reading recently called Anonymous. Really good. Alicia Britt Cole is the author, and she just talks about how, like, going through when Jesus was tempted, the enemy, like, it talks about how, like, the enemy has reigns over this world. Like,
Hmm.
the enemy is the king over this world. Like, granted, Jesus defeated the enemy, but, like, he has reigns. This is his kingdom, which is kind of
Hmm.
terrifying. But it also is, it's even that much more encouraging when you think about the ultimate mission. Like, I think sometimes
Yep.
we get so microscopic with, why am I here? Am I supposed to be a doctor, a lawyer, a social media influencer, a writer, go in the military, run a business? It's like, no, the mission is to bring people to Christ. Like, this
Hmm.
is not our home. And how you express that mission might change season to season, but do not be mistaken. The mission is to bring people to Christ. And I think as young people, anyone tuning in, especially you listening, like, we need more young people that are just ready to do that and ready to go to battle for that, because it is a battle. And so, Colton, thank you for being one of those people. You are so inspiring. You're helping the masses, truly. And it's just an honor to watch from afar and now from up close. Congrats on all you're doing. The Made to Shine family will be praying for you
Thank
and
you.
your beautiful family as you guys continue making waves in this world.
Thank you. I'm so blessed to have this opportunity. I absolutely love speaking to you. I'm excited to whether we do this again or just keep in touch. I'm excited
Yeah,
about our future conversations. Uh,
awesome.
yeah, thank you so much. Such a blessing.
Hi, friend. I hope that this blessed you and encouraged you, reminded you that God gave you a unique light, and it is your job to shine it in this world because we need you to. That being said, if you were blessed by this message and you can think of anybody else that also needs this type of encouragement, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment. It helps me out a lot and helps this message that I do believe God gave my heart to share with the world gets out. I hope you have such an amazing rest of your day.